Hey everyone, thank you for joining this evening. My name is Isaac and I help run marketing at DSN. Um, Today we're going to be talking about four metrics that specialty practices should measure every month, but unfortunately usually aren't. Um, this is meant to be a pretty quick session, and we'll also be recording it. So if you have to dip out earlier, if you want to, that's not a problem at all. Again, we'll also be sending this around. And if you have any questions as I go, feel free to put them in the chat and we will get to them at the end of it. So let's jump in now. Um, so I think the key to this session is really realizing that big numbers are usually the ones that move last. And revenue problems typically don't just start as a revenue problem. They start with a workflow issue that your team sort of learns to adapt around and they know shortcuts around, and potentially one person in your office knows all the shortcuts. Um, but eventually, little delays and little frictions just build up over time, and patient experience suffers in some way. And then finally, when revenue is impacted, it's too late. And that issue that started it all is still really prevalent. So the goal of this session is to point out four metrics that you should look out for to help catch these revenue issues before they actually happen. So in terms of what those four metrics are, I'm not going to hide the ball here. Number one is referral conversion rate. So are the referrals you're getting actually turning into visits and treatment? Two is scheduling lag time. How long does it take a patient to move from referred patient to actually getting treated in your office? Three is clinical note completion rate. Are notes being finished on time and consistently? And then lastly is insurance and collection delay, which is pretty self-explanatory. So one, referral conversion rate. And I think a lot of practices just look at the number of referrals they get each month. Are they going up, down, or are they staying the same? But what we find is that these specialty practices really should be looking at their referrals as a funnel. Um, so let's say you get 100 referrals. How many of those 100 are then moving into we reached out to the patient? So patient contacted versus consult scheduled, into visits completed, into treatment accepted, and then into, of course, collection made. Uh, so when you're just looking at the number of referrals being sent to your office, that's really not telling the full story here. And what you want is a pretty clear view on a monthly basis of these conversion metrics. So 1 month, is your front office reaching out to patients quickly, or were one of your staff out this month and that slipped? Because ultimately, seeing the patient is what matters most. So in terms of the referral conversion, on the left side here, you see some common blind spots. One is slow follow-up. So think, how can you automate that follow-up when you get a referral? Another is an inconsistent intake process. If patients need to call in or they need to fill out a manual form, that could certainly hurt their chance of conversion as opposed to an online patient registration. Another big thing we harp on too at DSN is visibility into referral sources. So yes, one referral source may be sending you a bunch of patients, but are those patients actually converting? Um, if you have a referral source that sends you, not too many patients, but they all convert and pay you, that might be a referral source that's worth investing more into. On the right side, you see a monthly scorecard that we encourage our practices to look at. Obviously, total referrals received, that's sort of top of the funnel. And then percent contacted within 24 hours, percent scheduled, percent visits completed, percent treatment accepted, and then revenue collected. And again, conversion by source. And the key here is really that input volume does not equal practice health. You really need to measure conversion through the entire funnel at every stage. To put this into a little bit of a graphical view here, on the left, these blue lines show just the number of referrals coming into your office. And then the right side is showing, excuse me, the red graph is showing completed visits. And if these aren't moving in lockstep together, then you have an issue. In terms of what to watch out for here, um, I think a big issue is referral volume up, but completed visits are flat. Another one is a large drop off after that initial intake. So, how are you commuting with a patient throughout the process? Again, variance by referral source, because that tells you where you need to be investing your time and attention, which referral sources. And again, slow response time to referred patients. That's just a super common one. Um, I don't see any questions yet. So jumping into metric two is scheduling lag time, which refers to how long it takes a patient to move from one step to the next. And here you have just some sample timelines. It took a practice 20 and a half days from referral to completed procedure. Comparing yourself to other practices is helpful, but it's really more important to track your own practice over time. Um, and then in terms of the steps, it goes from referral received, first contact made, consult booked, procedure scheduled, and then procedure completed. And when this process is too slow, let's say we're not reaching out to referred patients soon enough, that results in a lower case acceptance, more cancellations, frustrated referring offices, and again, delayed revenue. But that delayed revenue, again, only shows up at the end of the process. So it's all about catching those issues before they actually rear their ugly heads. I think it also is worth noting here that the point isn't to rush care, but it's to remove unnecessary friction so that patients can be seen as quickly as possible. And your team is spending time on high value tasks, not chasing patients around. Um, Here in the middle of the slide, that sort of shows you what we just talked about, some sample timelines. And again, I would encourage you all to not compare yourself to other practices, but compare yourself to yourself month over month. Um, Additionally, you should be breaking down this timeline by provider, by location, by procedure type, and again by referral source. Because if your practice sees a patient in 20 days on average, that's good to know. But if a wisdom tooth removal you're seeing in 7 days versus a different procedure, that's really important info that you're missing if you're not breaking out this reporting by these specific metrics. In terms of some practical tips, if lag time is increasing month over month, you should be looking for scheduling friction, so too much back and forth between the patient and your office, staffing gaps, provider bottlenecks, and then communication. Goes without saying, your office should definitely have some built-in automated communication for patient reminders, registration, things like that. Um, Number three. All right, we're moving through this fast. Let me take a quick sip of water. All right. Number three, clinical note completion rate, which refers to how consistently providers are completing their documentation on time. So again, just some sample numbers here. 72% of providers are completing their notes the same day, 18% after 24 hours, and then unfortunately 10% after 72 hours. Um, it's important to note that delayed notes affect more than just the note. It results in slower billing, weaker claim support, your staff chasing around, not focusing on higher value activities and patient care, messy follow-up, and inconsistency. And additionally, there can also be compliance risk if we're not completing notes on time in an accurate manner. Um, Same day completion should certainly be your target, although things happen and sometimes that's impossible. And you should again be tracking this monthly. Another key here at the bottom of the slide is that documentation shouldn't be documentation is an operational KPI that takes work from everyone in the office. It's not just a clinical administrative task. Again, and I feel like I'm repeating myself a little bit here, but averages don't tell the full story. If, as a whole, your office is completing 72% of your notes on the same day, that's good to know, and it's good to track month over month, but you really need to be breaking it out by provider because if you see here on the left, Dr. A is completing 92% of her notes on time. versus Dr. C who's only completing 48%. That's what you need to really drill into. Just seeing that 72% isn't going to be that helpful. In terms of what metrics to actually be looking at, 1% completed same day, percent completed in 24 hours, notes pending greater than 3 days. That's obviously an alert area. And then average time by provider. Um, and then if completion is slipping month over month, here are some things to look out for. Marting, manual charting friction, a lack of standardization, provider overload. So maybe they just have too many cases and they can't complete notes on a timely basis. And then too many clips or steps in their EMR. It's also worth stating that the goal here is visibility, not punishment, and to see whether an issue is isolated or systematic. So you can actually, again, deal with that issue before it shows up in your revenue numbers. Lastly, number 4 is insurance and collection delay, or how long it takes for completed work to become collected revenue. Again, a sample timeline here, and in this example, it takes roughly 50 days to go from service to a full collection. And your goal, of course, should be to get that number as small as possible. At the bottom here, you see some examples, same work, different timing, with practice A collecting in 30 days on average and practice B collecting in 65 days on average. And, in addition to actually getting cash in your bank account faster, when you streamline this process and it's at least partially automated, your team can be focused on those higher value tasks, patient care, growing the business, as opposed to chasing payments that you're already owed. Um, Another insight here is that delays in collections almost always start upstream with a note, with a claim, or with a workflow issue. Um, and yeah, again, just things start early in the process, and typically you only figure it out later. Um, Again, these are just some sample statistics here, which I don't think we need to dive too much into. But again, uh, sound like a broken record here, but cash being collected late is almost always uh, the symptom of a larger problem, such as weak insurance workflows, delayed notes, missing claim details, or a billing backlog. And again, financial issues usually begin operationally, and your goal should be to trace them back to the source. Um, so this is one of our final slides. So one metric, revenue, shows a problem, but these 4 metrics should show the pattern that actually lead to the final problem. In terms of how to think about them, referral conversion, growth efficiency, how efficient is your practice growing? Scheduling lag is just operational speed and efficiency. You want to automate as much of that as possible. Note completion results in team consistency. Again, it's super important to be breaking these reports out by provider, by referrer type, by location, etc. And then, of course, collection delay results in revenue flow. So what we recommend is every month you build this into your workflows. One, you should be reviewing trends, not just looking at a number. So if your 24-hour note completion rate is 72% one month, if that goes up to 80% next month, amazing. And again, you should just be comparing to yourself. Again, number 2, break it out by provider, location, or procedure type, or referrer, because the averages just hide the full story. 3, find one root cause for each issue. It's easy to point a bunch of fingers, but for each issue, just find one main cause and stick with that. 4, assign one action item to one person with a clear deadline. And then 5, revisit next month, excuse me. Which sort of circles back, circle of lifestyle, to number 1, which is you should be reviewing these trends month over month. And the goal is not more reporting, it's a repeatable monthly rhythm that builds accountability at your practice. Now for key takeaways. 1, just try to surface issues earlier, because leading metrics catch problems before your revenue dips. Two, measure conversion, not just referral volume, because referrals going up without conversion doesn't really help you, and in fact hurts you because you're wasting time. Three, shape speed shapes perception. Scheduling lag affects patience, refers, and revenue. Four, documentation drives the financial engine, and late notes ripple into billing and cash collection. And lastly, again, track the pattern, not just the number. So I know a lot of us here are already using DSN, but if you're not, we encourage you to look for a practice management system that makes it easy to track these things, such as referral tracking with built-in scheduling, clinical workflows that make sense for specialty dental, and then inbuilt billing and collections functionality. So you can actually collect what you're owed, excuse me. Whew. That was like a sprint. But with that being said, we will open this up to questions. Feel free to put anything into the chat. All right, seeing a slow drip. Um, all right, here's a question. Um, what does a realistic timeline look like from date of service to full collection? Um, So for that, we think a well-run practice can collect in around 30 days on average, but a lot of practices, unfortunately, are closer to about 50 to 65 days. That being said, again, these delays almost always track back upstream to a documentation lag, a weak insurance follow-up, or something like that. All right, another question. Um, why focus on these four metrics instead of just tracking production and collections? The answer to that is production and collections are downstream from these other metrics and they're lagging indicators. And by the time those are affected, it's usually too late. Another question, what's a realistic referral conversion rate? Um, I think it's fair to expect some fall off. Um, and the example we showed, I believe, has a 38% of going from referral to treatment accepted. Um, But what's more important than knowing just that rate is knowing where your drop is happening and whether it's systematic. Let's see if we have one more. Oh, that seems to be it. Um, so again, thank you all for joining this evening. We will be sending this around, and any questions you have, feel free to reach out to us. We'll send you an email. You can just reply or reach out through our website. So again, thank you so much and have an amazing rest of your evening.